Are you looking for a luxurious ride but want to be emancipated from the high payments? Well, then you might be in the market for a used Lincoln. All right. Right next to us, we got a 2014 Lincoln MKZ with nearly 150,000 miles on it. Now, luxury cars are always tough to review in these buy or bust videos because they aren't always synonymous with long-term reliability. But we're gonna check out this MKZ today. I think it shares a lot of parts with standard Ford cars, which might help it out. We're gonna take a walk around the outside. We're gonna talk about the common problems, and then we're gonna decide if this is built for the long haul, if it's a buy or a bust. Starting up front on our Lincoln MKZ, and I will tell you guys right off the bat, I think that Lincoln did a great job on these cars. I think they are sleek, I think they look unique, and I just think that they are a very much timeless style that looks pretty good even now that they're a little bit older. I don't have a lot of cosmetic things to bring up to you guys on these cars. I think that most of the cosmetic stuff holds up pretty well. The paint shines nice. I don't have any crazy fading or rubber wearing out or anything like that we sometimes typically see. The only thing is maybe look under it for some rust, but that's really not too typical on these. The only other thing that I really noticed is the wheels do have some corrosion on them, so just check that out. Under the hood of the Lincoln here, we got the 2-liter EcoBoost turbo 4-cylinder that makes 240 horsepower and 270 pound-feet of torque. Now, those numbers are kind of average for a car of this size. I feel like they're a little bit low, though, for a luxury car. Usually they bump up the power numbers a little bit, so we'll see how it goes on the test drive. Now, the number one issue with this engine is coolant intrusion. Kind of defective materials from the factory or design that allows the head gasket to seep some coolant over into the cylinder. It's not really a blown head gasket, but the effect is largely the same, and you might notice some white smoke, you might notice some coolant loss, and eventually overheating, which will cause you more issues. So you want to make sure that the coolant, if you're looking at a used one, is topped up. Make sure the exhaust doesn't smell like coolant, anything like that. Ford is aware of the problem, but there's no recall or anything like that that I'm aware of for this engine. Now, the one thing I need to mention for this coolant intrusion issue is that there is some years of these cars that it's more prevalent, and that's actually the 2015 to 2018 MKZs. The 2014 like this is less likely. They still had some issues with it, and some of the later 2014, they still had some more of the problems because of design changes and things. So 2014 is actually almost a year you would rather have, even though some of the newer ones obviously are newer, they are more likely to have this problem. Now, the next issue on this engine is turbos, and this is a obviously small 4-cylinder engine with a turbo on it, and across all manufacturers, you'll end up potentially having turbo issues as the car ages and you get more miles up on them. So around 150, 200,000 miles, you could run into turbo issues. These are not any more common than any other car. Really, they wear pretty decently, but that is the age where you'll start to maybe have some turbo issues, and that's a more expensive fix. So make sure the car's not smoking, anything like that. Make sure the turbo sounds good and the car accelerates smoothly, and hopefully your turbo will last a long time after that and just keep up with oil changes and things, and that will help the life of it as well. Other things to look out for is just oil leaks. Sometimes the lines to that turbo can leak, sometimes valve covers can leak. So just get under, make sure you're not smelling any oil under the engine bay or anything like that, or noticing a puddle underneath, because these do need the oil up at the proper operating level to not cause other issues. Last thing before we move on to transmission things is the motor mounts. Motor mounts can go bad around 100, 150,000 miles on these. Not an expensive fix, typical across all manufacturers, but they are something that if you notice your engine rocking in here, or clunky shifts, could be the motor mounts. Now, this engine is mated to a 6-speed automatic transmission, and I'm not even sure really what to say about the transmission because it has proven to pretty much be able to have a problem with anything about it, but outright failures are not that common. But hard shifts, especially from 2 to 3 or 3 to 2, are very common when it's shifting between those gears. So you want to feel that if you're taking one on a test drive. Also, when it shifts, if it has torque converter shudder, if the car kind of shakes or you feel something odd or a vibration there, a lot of times that is the torque converter having an issue. And there is some issues with the valve body as well, as far as like shifting from gear to gear or anything like that. So really, you can have a problem with just about anything on these transmissions. There is some software updates that they can do to potentially help out with it. But I really haven't seen that many that have just completely stopped working. It's usually more erratic shifting that is just a common thing with these transmissions. Moving on to the interior here of our Lincoln. Lincoln is a proper luxury car brand, and we should be in a very luxurious interior in that case. And honestly, my first impressions are not super impressed. I would be very impressed if this was a standard Ford interior, but for their luxury offering, I think it's kind of basic. It looks decent enough, but nothing in here is particularly luxurious. They just added a few things on the door panels, some silver trim and things like that. And it is very comfortable. I can't deny that. The seats are, and they've overall held up decently on this car, but there is some common wear and tear items that we need to talk about. And the number one would be the dash. The dashes are known to peel. This car doesn't have that issue at all, but they're very famous for the dash peeling from sun and everything and coming unglued. This one does have the material for the headliner on the pillars is coming unglued a little bit from the sun there, so it seems like they have a fair amount of issues with that type of stuff. The seats themselves are not torn or anything like that, so the leather has held up nicely. The steering wheel has held up nicely for the age and the miles. Buttons, they're all pretty much rubbed off for your shifter along here, which is an odd shifter, but I actually kind of like it. I don't hate it at all. And everything else is just kind of, some of it's not hard plastic, but it's certainly not premium materials. Now, as far as electronics, you do have a lot of problems with like door latches failing. They use standard Ford buttons everywhere inside the car, so nothing particularly fancy about any of that. The infotainment system is also known to be quite glitchy, is typical Ford problems there. Overall, I actually would not hate to drive this car for a daily driver at all. It's very, very comfortable, but I also don't necessarily think that it feels like a true luxury car. Moving on to the rear seat here of our Lincoln, and I have very good leg room. My headroom, though, is almost non-existent. I'm 5'9", and my head is almost touching the ceiling because of the sloped roof in the back here. Seat itself, quite comfortable. They use the same materials and things on the door panels back here as they did up front, so that looks pretty nice. Otherwise, it's actually fairly basic. Like I said, the seat is comfortable. There's not a whole lot of wear and tear that I noticed or anything like that. I could ride back here for a while. I just wouldn't want to be any taller than I am. Now, if you're looking to live out your mob boss dreams, a Lincoln is a good option for that. And this trunk actually has plenty of room. There's tons of room inside there, so you can hide as much as you need in there. Now, there is one thing that I want to mention on this trunk, and obviously you can release the trunk from the key, but the button is down here at the license plate. It is one of the worst placed buttons that I could really ever think of. It's one of the poorest decisions I've seen as far as button placement. This is an automatic trunk though, so you do have the option to hit that right there, as long as you find the button. I didn't the first time, but I don't know why they couldn't have made like one of the letters a touch sensitive button or something like that. That would have been a much, much better decision. Pulling out onto the road now in our Lincoln MKZ, and I've not driven one of these before, so I'm excited to do it here today, and I got a clear stretch of road, so let's get on it. I will say on that pull, power felt pretty good. I don't think I'd actually have any complaints about that. I will say that it also shifted oddly. I think I felt what people complain about, just kind of an inconsistent feeling, but not necessarily slipping, anything like that, and not a smooth shift between gears there at all. I will get on it again here and kind of do it a normal acceleration pull. As we're just cruising down the road right here, it feels really nice. I don't have any issues now, but I definitely felt some odd shifts there on that little acceleration run. I'm going to accelerate one more time here and just see how it feels up on a sort of normal acceleration. Just going into traffic here. I'm up around 40 miles an hour now. And I wouldn't say the transmission felt bad. I'm not sure I would think anything of it usually, but they are very firm shifts that just don't feel like you're in a super smooth luxury car, I'll say that. Now, the fuel mileage on these is rated at 22 and 33, which I have no complaints about. I think that's good fuel mileage for a luxury car like this. These can run on regular fuel with no issues, Lincoln says, but they also say if you want full power output, I'm not sure how much of a difference it makes, you should run premium in them. But I don't think it's going to cause a check engine light or anything like that if you don't run premium. So that's probably a good thing. I don't know that you actually need the extra power. They got plenty of power as is. Now, as far as suspension issues, I don't have anything right now. It steers very nicely, tight steering, and I haven't heard any clunks on this car at this, mileage. However, this car doesn't have the adaptive suspension, which is the higher end option and can cause some more problems that are quite expensive to fix. So if you're looking at one of those, you might be in for some big repair bills because common failures on those are somewhat common. The other thing is typical Ford stuff of wheel bearings. If you notice a humming sound, ABS light on, anything like that, you probably have a bad wheel bearing, and not the most expensive thing to replace. I'm not too concerned about it, but if you notice that humming sound, definitely going to have a wheel bearing replacement coming, and you can always rock the car back and forth on your test drive to pinpoint where that sound's coming from and which wheel bearing has failed. Overall, cruising around, it does feel a little more luxurious than your standard run-of-the-mill Ford. And like I said, I do think these cars are truly beautiful. I think Lincoln did a really good job in that regard. I don't know that they're on par with some of the other luxury cars out there on the market, but we'll talk about price at the end because that's also a huge factor. Back from the test drive, and now it's time to decide if our Lincoln is a buy or a bust. I do think that there's a lot to love about these cars, even if they may not be the craziest, most luxurious luxury car ever. I think they are beautiful and offer a lot more options than your standard run-of-the-mill car. The market on these cars really is where they shine. They have depreciated very hard, but that is good for the used market buyers. These cars with 150,000 miles are somewhere around $5,000 or $6,000, and I do think this is an insane car with a ton of value for that price. The questions really come into long-term reliability. These reviews are generally based around a car making it to 250 or 300,000 miles without having major issues, and I'm not sure that these will, between the coolant intrusion issues and just general transmission problems that these have. These also are known to just have random problems and little hiccups here and there, as a lot of luxury cars do. However, I can't really ignore the price either. So today I'm going to make this car a luxury car buy and a regular buy or bust review bust. I don't think these are the best option if you want a cheap daily driver and just a commuter car. I think there's much more reliable options out there, even maybe for the price. But if you want something that's a little bit fancier, a little bit more comfortable, and has a few more options, then I think it's probably a buy for you. You just might have to plan on some maintenance down the road. If you have one of these cars and have had a great experience, I want to hear about it. Or if you're having a terrible experience or you think there's something I missed, I want to hear all about that too. Put it down in the comments below. I appreciate you guys following along. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.